Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm James, continuing on with my build of the Aeromite RC plane. I'm building this plane off of the plan set. This is not a boxed kit that you can purchase. If you're interested in building this plane and you want to obtain a set of plans like this, check out my introduction video. I go over a few different ways on how you can obtain the plan. So in this video, I'm going to continue on with constructing the fuselage. And I'm going to be concentrating on this front nose part of the plane where the engine is, the engine compartment area. I'd like to get to some sheeting for the top of the plane. And in order to do that, which I'm going to show you here in just a minute, I'm going to have to put on the horizontal stabilizer and maybe the fin. So let's go ahead and take a look at the plans real quick. So the top sheeting, from what I can gather, the side, if you will, is one piece. And even though it shows this sort of canopy looking thing here, that's just a colored. That is not an actual open canopy or clear canopy. It's just one piece of wood that goes all the way across, and then it comes down to the tail here, right back here. So what you'll notice if you look closely at the plan is that you can't put the sheets on until you do two things. You have to install the horizontal stabilizer, and then have to install above that the rudder is going to sit on top of that. So what I have to do here, looking back at the plane, is we got to put our horizontal stabilizer on right here, and then we got to put our fin on like that, and then we'll come through and we'll put our sheeting on over that. So those are the steps that I have to do for that. Now going back to the front of the plane, I mentioned in the last video I'm going to make a hatch so that I can access my fuel tank. I'm going to hold off on actually making the hatch right now. So I'm just going to take my sheeting all the way up to this point and then just cut it off. Now, for the front of the plane here in the engine compartment area, there's a few things to take note of also. So first of all, it's not going to be that hard. I'm just going to have to put these kind of blocks in. You're going to block it in. So if you look at the front here, we're going to put a block here. We're going to put a block on the bottom. And there's also going to be these sort of triangular pieces here, these sort of triplers, if you will, that are going to go, you know, right in here and such. But there's one thing that's actually kind of interesting. I didn't know what the heck it was. And if you look closely here, you can see on the plans, it's got these two little sort of hatch marked, and they point out 1/16 inch Paxolin. I guess that's how you pronounce it, Paxolin. And that material, I had to look it up. I didn't know what the heck that was. It turns out that, for those of you who don't know, is that's sort of like, I guess how I can describe it is it's sort of like a fiber board, like a strong fiber board that is used in electronics. I don't know if it's used to make circuit boards or whatever, but it's basically a strong sort of fibrous sort of sheet material. I can't find anything like that. There maybe are some equivalents to that you can obtain, but it's something that this plan, I think, came out of the UK, and it's a material that I guess you can get there. So I'm not going to sweat it. I think they put that in to help strengthen the these engine rails. And again, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I think that this is going to be plenty strong for the 15 size engine, especially when I put in these extra doublers, these extra triangular doublers that I'm showing here. So I'll leave that up to everybody else. You could do what you want, but I'm going to go ahead and just leave or just omit that Paxolin sheet in there. And then just hopefully to maybe help you understand it, you can kind of see it if you do go download the plan and you download the article that came with it. You can see they kind of show that in there. It's like that dark, it's kind of maybe hard to pick up on the camera, but it's just right here. It's just like sort of a dark piece of, looks like a piece of plywood really. So if anything, I was thinking maybe I would just go ahead and put a little piece of plywood in there. But again, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be plenty strong. And the engine compartment is going to be supported by not only the doublers that I'm going to be using up here, the triangular, but it's also going to have the block on top, and it's all going to be epoxy. So I think it's going to be okay. That's just going to be my opinion and how I'm going to do it. So for those of you who may build this, you know, you kind of have to make your own decision on that one. And then one more thing I wanted to point out about the sheeting is that I can't use the plans to make a template to cut from. The reason that is because the top of the plane is basically sort of like this triangular shape. And so if I were going to cut this to use as my piece, it would be too short because obviously it's tilting back into the sheet. You know, that should make sense, right? So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a sheet material that's going to be, you know, wider or higher, if you want to call it that way. I plan on attaching it sort of on the bottom, and then I'll just trim it to fit as we get to the top of these formers. Now let's take a look at the tail surfaces. So the fin is made out of 1/8 inch balsa. So is the rudder. And it's one solid piece, as you can see here. And again, it's just going to slide down on top of the horizontal stabilizer, and the top portion of the fin, or kind of like this front little section, is going to sort of like key into this little slot that we made back here on this F8 former. As for the horizontal stabilizer and elevator, it's the same material. It's going to be 1/8 inch balsa sheeting. And then it does have these sort of tips, which are going to be put on kind of cross grain to the main grain direction of the horizontal stabilizer, shown here. And then it also has these sort of like extra support, what they call anti-warp inserts. And I've never seen that before. It looks like it's a good idea. Obviously, with one solid piece of wood like this, what this is made out of, you could have the possibility of it warping a little bit. So you're going to put these little cross grain supports in it. That's pretty cool. And then as for the elevator, it's just going to have a joiner to attach the two pieces. So I'm not sure at this point if I'm going to go ahead and build or construct the rudder and the elevator yet. I'm going to concentrate on the horizontal stabilizer and the fin so I can get them onto the fuselage. Okay, well, before I get started, I wanted to mention something about the comments that I've been receiving on the channel regarding this build off of a plan set. I'm getting lots and lots of comments. I'm getting lots of tips from people who I can tell have a lot of experience building RC planes off of plans. So if you're new to doing this, and I have never built a plane off a plan set before like this. And so if you're new to doing this, and even if you're not, check out those tips, because there's tons of them on there that people are leaving that are really good suggestions. And the ones that I've sort of been thinking about or sort of focusing on are the ones regarding, you know, cutting out templates for the different formers and things that we've done so far. People have mentioned different ways, like tracing using the plan and tracing using like graphite paper, like carbon copy paper, trace the shape onto the wood and then cut that out. Some people have mentioned, well, some person mentioned using some like turpentine or mineral spirits and putting the plan down on the wood and sort of soaking the plan a little bit, and then that ink would come off and imprint onto the wood. That's another method. There's tons of stuff. Using the glue stick like I have, or even like a spray glue onto the wood and then attaching the paper onto that, and then coming back with a heat source like a heating iron or maybe a heat gun, and basically kind of peeling the paper off. Also just kind of sanding the paper off. And then one of the best, I think, I'll say I'm the one that I like the best, and is the one which someone suggested to actually put like masking tape on the wood and then glue your pattern onto the masking tape over the wood, and then you cut the entire thing out and then just peel it off because the masking tape won't stick. I thought that was a pretty nifty one. So again, check out those comments, and as I go, you know, keep them coming, because it's going to be helpful to everybody, especially when I get to cutting the ribs for the wing, because that's going to be a little bit of a process. I have an idea how I want to do that, but I'm sure I'm going to get lots and lots of comments about that also. So thank you for that. Keep them coming. I really appreciate it. We're all learning from each other, and that's why we're here. So let's keep moving with the build. It's going to be fun. So one more thing I wanted to point out before I get started here. I'm going to go ahead and begin with this nose section, the engine compartment of the plane here. I wanted to point out what I highlighted here, which is shown as a 3/8 inch tripler, and the arrows show kind of the limits of it. And it's filled in this sort of like triangular opening here below the engine mount. Now let me show you where that is on the fuselage as I have it constructed right now. So it's basically this area right in here. Now the thing about it is, if I filled that in as the way I read it on the plan, if I fill that whole section in, it'll be a little bit tricky or kind of odd to drill your bolts in to mount the engine through that. The bolts would have to come, you know, from the engine all the way down kind of into the bottom out here somehow. I guess the other way to do it would be just to use wood screws and screw it straight into those, but I've never done that. I kind of don't like using wood screws because I don't really trust them. I want to bolt it in. So again, I'm going to leave this little piece out. I don't think it's going to be that important. And again, I'm going to try to reinforce some of the other areas using my triangular stock. And then the last thing I'll mention before we get going here is my approach to this area here is I'm going to use the wood that I have, my blocks of wood, which aren't the same sizes as the stock material shown on the plans, but I'm going to make it up just using different sizes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cover the top here with a block. I'm going to cover the bottom with the block that goes there. I'm going to put those little triangular pieces in here. And then I'm going to shape it, and it's going to be closed off, but what I'm going to do is I'll come back when I go to mount the engine, I'll come back and I'll cut out what I need. I can't really anticipate right now what the final shape is going to be needed to accommodate the engine. So my approach is put all these blocks on and then come back later and cut out what I need and then install the engine. That's the way I've done it before in other planes. For me, it kind of works better that way. So again, I'm just going to change it up a little bit from the plans, and I'm just going to reinforce this front area the way I think will be best, and hopefully it'll work okay. I'm just going to use 30-minute epoxy, and I'm going to cut some pieces and fit it in a few of these areas, and then we'll block it off on the top and the bottom. And then after all that, I can install the sort of front last former, if you will, that will go right up here in the front nose of the airplane. All right, we'll set this aside and then we'll work on cutting out our tail pieces. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, I got lots of great suggestions and tips on how to put the templates onto the wood and get the templates off the wood and such. And the one that I really liked was the idea about using the tape. So I'm going to try this out. This is just basically frog tape. I'm just going to use this thin masking tape, and I'm going to tape it on to my balsa sheet here, and then I'll go back and I'm going to paste these onto that, and then we'll cut them out and we'll just be able to peel them off. So here are all the different pieces now. Now if you were watching that little segment there, you probably noticed that I didn't really have like a set way of doing everything. Some edges I used the balsa stock edge to help me with the for the straight edge. Sometimes I used obviously a scale or a steel straight edge to help cut the straight lines. Sometimes I just eyeballed it. Just kind of did it as I thought would work out for each little piece. Nothing special really. And then I just kind of cut them roughly. I can shape them of course as I go here, but here are the main pieces. And then the thing I wanted to point out is that there is like this little tab that sticks out that's going to plug into, like as I mentioned, into this little piece right here. It's going to have to be cut to the right size, but make sure if you're doing this that you leave that little tab on there so that it can plug in, so that the fin can plug in to that little former. And I will say, I really do like this method of using the tape like this. It made it very, very easy, very clean. So thank you for that tip. I think I'm going to be doing it that way from now on. I like that a lot because I don't have to worry about any kind of adhesive on the wood, and it just pulls right off. Again, you want to make sure, I would think, that you don't want to use super heavy duty masking tape. Again, I'm using this Frog tape. The brand is called Frog tape, and it's just a kind of a fine, sort of a delicate, very thin tape for painting, but it works out pretty good. Here's the tips. And I did have to switch my orientation of the tip. You probably saw that also. I cut them one way. Well, actually cut them the wrong way. So this is the grain. I want the tip has to be sort of, the length of the tip is going to go along the grain. I had it going the opposite way. And the reason, again, we're doing that, I think, is just so it helped keep the horizontal stabilizer from warping and such. So this goes here. Started this video out doing the fuselage, but I ended up doing a lot of work on the tail section here. So there's that. And then, of course, these are our little pieces that are going to help support the horizontal stabilizer from warping also. That's just a 1/8 inch stock material, I think 1/2 inch by 1/8 inch piece of like stick balsa. This guy just pulls right off. Nice. That's really nice. Big fan now of the tape method. I'm going to set the rudder and the elevator pieces aside. I don't need those right now. We'll put these off to the side because what I need to concentrate on is this horizontal stabilizer and then the fin. So I'm going to glue on the tips here for this, and also glue in these support pieces here, or these stiffeners, I guess I'll call them. And then we'll shape these, give these a little bit of a shape, get rid of the hard edges on them, and then we can install them onto the tail section of the fuselage. And like I mentioned, then we can go ahead and start covering the upper portion of the fuselage with our sheeting. It's going to do a very little bit, light sanding, just to kind of straighten the edge a little bit. I don't want to go too much. And then for this, I don't need to really pin it down over the plan section of where the horizontal stabilizer is shown, because it doesn't really matter. It's just, these are just going to be lined up along the edge here, so it's going to be pretty simple. I'm going to pin it down just to hold it in place. I'm just going to use a little bit of thin CA for these areas, and I got, a little bit of a gap in here. This is pretty stiff inside here. It's not like it's loose, but I will just fill that in with a little bit of the thick CA. So now I want to attach the horizontal stabilizer and the fin to the fuselage, so then we can come back and do our sheeting. But what I did off camera is I put a center line on my horizontal stabilizer. Very simple. I just measured my length divided by 2, and I just dropped my line across. I used my square, and I also checked it from a couple spots. Like, I think these are pretty accurate, these little inserts. So I measured inward, and I just got a few spots that I marked, and I just drew my line that way. So I'm pretty confident that that's nice and straight and in the center of the horizontal stabilizer. So now what I need to do is figure out kind of like how to get it lined up. And I did the same thing back here real quick. I actually measured the width here along this little former here, and I marked my center line with pencil right there, as you can see. Again, just measured the width, divided by 2, and just checked it. So if I put the fuselage down, let me go ahead and move the camera though here real quick so we can see what I'm doing. Alrighty, that's better. So I've been thinking about, how I kind of want to line this up so I can get it as straight as possible, perpendicular with the axis, the vertical axis of the plane and everything else. So what I decided to do is put my fuselage down on my table here. I'm going to use my blocks here to keep everything kind of sturdy. Hold it like that. And then I'll put my horizontal stabilizer like this on here, and you can see I got it lined up with my mark right there. Hopefully you can see that. So again, there's my center line on that former, and we have the center line basically between the seam of the fuselage sides that came together here in the tail, and I can just line it up along there. Alright, so since the fuselage is sort of that box construction, if I put my level on here, it's pretty close. It's nice and level across the top there. Just a couple checks like this. So I should be able to put this guy on here, and he's pretty level too, so I can kind of make a little bit of adjustments there. But as you can see, so you kind of see the process. I'm going to get it lined up, and I'm going to check it to make sure it's all nice and level. I'll do some measurements, and then we'll glue it on. And then the other thing I'm checking is I pick a spot up here on the nose, and I don't want to kind of move the plane, but put my measuring tape like up here on the nose up here and measure down to the tip, the back tip. I'm about 27 1/4 of an inch from there to the tip. And then I can do the same thing on this side. I'll just check it here, kind of get it on that little tip on the nose up there and bring it down, and it's 27 1/4, so it's right on. I don't know if I can show that. Hopefully on the camera you can see it, but you can kind of see, hopefully you can see that 27 1/4 is like right there at that little, right at the tip there. And I'll come on this side. Kind of tricky holding on to this stuff, but you can see right there, 27 1/4. Hopefully the camera picks that up. I don't have the best angle. Alright, so this makes it easy to glue. So now I know that all I have to do is put my glue on and line up my 2 marks where they need to be, and stick it on, and it's good to go. So for this, I'm just going to use my thick CA because I think I can get it on here without too much trouble, and I'll have time. If I really needed to take extra time and make sure things were aligned with a different situation, I would just use epoxy. That'll give you time to work. But I think for this, because it's so small and I have those lines, I can just put them right on there carefully. This guy there. All right, and we'll let that cure, and we'll come back and we'll be able to put on our fin. Well, I let this cure overnight and I kind of cleaned up my workbench while that was happening also. Let's go ahead and take a look and see where we ended up here. So I'll move my weights out of the way. Got these pins. It was a little tricky to get the pin out once the CA's on it, but very careful. There we go. Well, I didn't get as far along as I thought I would in this video. You know, it took me a little bit longer than I anticipated to cut out these tail section pieces here. But again, we got the nose section reinforcement blocks in. So next video, I plan on finishing up hopefully most of the sheeting on the top and the bottom of the fuselage, as well as these blocks up here in the front, the bottom block here and this top block. And again, you know, I'm going to be putting the blocks on kind of solid, and then I'm going to cut them out when I put the engine in. So I'll be doing that. And I also have that little piece to go up here in the front as well. So like always, I really appreciate you watching the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.